Tommy Rex, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kaelin listens to this all the time. Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle, and getting pretty excited about the conversation going to have right now with Dr. Yafi Yair. How you doing, Doctor?
I am excellent. How are you? Good to be here.
Good to have you. Good to have you. After you're rubbing in my face the great weather you got down there in Florida a little bit.
We are very lucky here, living in paradise.
Yeah. I'm going to definitely have to come down there and visit my family in the Tampa area. So you're definitely motivating me for that. And maybe we can talk if that's in the cards for me as we get along in the interview here. But usually when I have people on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. So do you remember when you were little Yafi, what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
I had a lot of ambitions. Anywhere from, so actually I had a whole period in my life when I was pretty little, not like tiny, but like a young teenager, that I was very passionate about singing and acting. And for a while, I thought that was going to be my path. I thought I was going to be an actress.
Oh,
so that was my path for a while. I also really love music, hence the singing. What else? I also really, really love science. So I always thought that I would be some kind of a doctor. So there are different ideas that somehow had to arrange themselves to work together.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm used to having, we were talking before we went on, I'm used to having a lot of musicians on here. So it's very musical friendly podcast. But
music is a big part of my life.
Okay, great. Yeah. But I'm also like into the thinking outside the box and things of the world that most people won't touch on. So I'm really excited about where we're gonna head in this conversation. But like, when was it, like, as you were figuring out, like, once you got past like the acting and music thing, when was it that you kind of discovered your calling?
Yeah, so when I was very little, even before the acting and singing and all of that, I already had inclination that I had certain either abilities or gifts or at least interests that were very unusual. So we're talking now, maybe that's better to answer your question as little Yafi, because I was really little then, but I was so little, I wasn't thinking what I was going to do with my life. But what I was thinking is, for example, and we're talking like 4 or 5 years old, right? How can I manipulate energy with my hands and practice telekinesis? How can I meditate and teach myself how to levitate? What 4-year-old has these ideas, So from the very beginning, I had this passion and interest with the unusual, spiritual, energetic, etc. So that was even before I had any concept of what do I want to be when I grow up. So that was already planting that seed. And then when it was time to be more practical with life, I put nonsense aside and I really focused on my scientific inclination. And that's when I really decided to get a doctorate in clinical psychology. I thought that was the perfect fit. I really did, with my love for human nature and even the unknown and human potential and my desire to be of service and to help. Psychology really just felt like the perfect fit. So that's what I did. And I got a doctorate in clinical psychology. And we're talking 11 years of school. And by the time I was the last couple of years of my doctorate, I started getting a feel. Well, first I discovered hypnosis, which just blew my mind and was such a fascinating world. And it was such a good way to bridge the spiritual with the clinical, because it deals with the subconscious and the unknown. And then through hypnosis, I also discovered past life regression and life between lives and QHHT, and that journey really expanded. But at the same time, when it was really time, when I graduated and it was time to either work for someone else or open my own office, but that time I really felt that the clinical mainstream field was too closed-minded to what my passions were. And yeah, closed-minded is really the way to go about it. Even within my training, even hypnosis, mainstream clinical hypnosis was not accepted by everyone. And it was really difficult to find a supervisor, right? We're talking while I was doing my training, a supervisor that was, forget experience in hypnosis, but that was into it at all in any way. So the mainstream field was really, really closed-minded. Now we're opening a little more. We're taking baby steps. But that's when I decided that I'm going to work for myself and I'm going to take it full on spiritual. I decided if the clinical field makes me choose, I'm going to really follow my heart. And that's when I opened my practice and I practice hypnosis. That was my main modality, but also counseling and energy work, because I was actually trained in energy work before I ever got into psychology. Well, no, after my undergrad, but before my graduate, but we're talking like 20 years ago. I already got into energy work. But then I kind of forgot about it while I did my doctorate. But once I graduated and really committed myself to my spiritual journey and really decided to integrate it into my professional career 100%, that's when I brought it back into my practice. And it was also at the same time, it was parallel with a personal spiritual awakening. So it wasn't only professional and the discovery of hypnosis, it was also the discovery of meditation. And through that, leaning into developing my psychic gifts. Unlike when I was little, I was told it was nonsense. Now it was, oh my God, this is incredible. This is fascinating. How far can I take it? So I really dove all the way in, and my journey became more and more spiritual, more and more expansive, till we got to the point where I am now, that I still practice hypnosis. I still practice counseling. But I would say that the main thing that I do is channeling, verbal channeling and light language. So we're really talking about a journey from the very grounded, very clinical to very spiritual, very expanded, but with the intention to keep it practical, to keep it grounded, to keep it real.
That's amazing. I love how, back when you had that childlike mind and imagination, it was like more like open-minded before the world starts telling you like, no, that's childish, and you were able to come back full circle and rediscover that. And I actually have benefited from hypnotherapy as well. I'm a retired Navy veteran, and after my last deployment, I was dealing with some PTSD and stuff, and I was seeking other methods that like the VA couldn't provide, and I discovered somebody that went through like this place called the Wellness Institute in I think Seattle, Washington area. And they did a practice, like you were saying, the past life regressions and the hypnotherapy, and that like helped me so much kind of get to the root of a lot of what I was holding on to from my past, things that I like packaged, my subconscious mind packaged and tried to, I'm 16 years sober now, but I would numb with drugs and alcohol and stuff like that because I didn't, know what I was dealing with.
You and many others. Yes, I actually work with vets, so I have quite an experience with PTSD and with vets in general, and also with substance abuse. And yes, it's it's a lot to unpack when you go through such intense experiences. Our natural mechanisms are often not enough to unpack everything and process everything, because it's just too much for us. We get overwhelmed. So it's common that afterwards, over time, especially nowadays that we're beginning to have this openness, so you could find something like hypnosis, and begin going back to that and unpacking all those emotions, right? Because there are all these unprocessed emotions that are so intense that the body and the mind doesn't really know what to do with them. So hypnosis really helps you go to the root and begin processing these emotions, so triggers don't trigger you as easily. And over time, you become more and more resilient, and your baseline, slowly goes up. Because, life is not perfect. There's still difficulties. There's still anxieties in life. I mean, just life. Life is interesting.
Yeah.
But your baseline raises, so it's not always survival.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely, it was a huge part of my healing journey, and what has opened my mind to so many other things that modern Western medicine doesn't tell you about. And it helped me so much, like you said, to kind of discover that root. I'm still, a work in progress. I'm still seeing therapists and doing,
Mm-hmm.
like CBT and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
but the point that, like, I really felt like that I started my healing journey and my recovery and sobriety was after
Mm-hmm.
doing the hypnotherapy, to find that,
Yes.
to get to that root of what was I afraid of, what was I numbing out. And there's still more to unpack,
we're
but
all we're all work in progress, and I actually want to mention that. I'm glad you said that, because sometimes when people hear other people speak, they think that those other people don't have as many problems, they've got their problems figured out. We're talking, we're on the spiritual journey, we're on the self-discovering journey, a psychologist. But we all have issues. We all have our ego, we all have our emotions to deal with, different wounds that we have. It's a part of life. And especially nowadays, and I don't know how you are experiencing it, but especially nowadays, our society is going through really drastic changes, and the
no,
changes are accelerating. And our bodies are changing too, our minds are changing too. It's like everything is changing. So I wonder if you're noticing, for example, are you more raw and vulnerable in these times where everything is changing? Or are you finding that your healing journey is actually accelerated? What have you found with yourself?
I mean, I think I like you said, I'm definitely been in places where I felt I've become more raw and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain groups where I feel I can share things, like, especially in recovery, some of the recovery groups where, like,
Mm-hmm.
men in today's, in culture aren't allowed to be afraid or show emotions or cry and stuff like that. And I
Well, that's
found
one of the
places.
things that is changing, right? That
Yeah,
like
yeah,
masculinity, that macho masculinity is breaking down, allowing
yeah.
men to get in touch with their emotion, with their, God forbid, feminine side.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been, and like you said, I mean, yeah, I definitely feel the the changing going on in society. And there's days where it's just like I can feel like I'll get, like, I try not to get stuck in the fear and the low vibrational part.
Hmm.
I try and still lean towards the faith, or I'll just, thankfully, being in recovery, I have the serenity prayer I lean on quite a bit.
Yes.
Like, what do I have control over, and I'm just going to trust that my higher powers got this.
I love the serenity prayer. I think it should be known by everyone, no matter what your field, what you're doing. Um, it's really valuable internal lesson to learn when to let go and when to take action and to know the difference. It's
Yeah.
such a wise lesson, and you can apply it to absolutely anything.
I know, because I find myself being I'm a father. I'm in been in my first, like, healthy, sober relationship in quite a few years. But I have the subconscious, like, mindset still of unworthiness, and I'll self sabotage or I'm just like trying to be a control freak. And these are things that,
Mhm.
I'll screw it up by trying to control things that I
Absolutely.
can't control,
Yeah, because the desire to control comes directly from anxiety and fear. People don't always recognize it, but that's where it comes from. Because if you were able, or when you're able, to really live in a space of full trust in yourself that you can handle whatever challenge comes your way, and also trust in the universe and in the environment that things are okay and things are going to be okay. When we're really able to be in that space and live in that space, there's no need to control anymore,
Yeah.
because we can just trust and go. And doors do open and synchronicities start happening more and more and more. So, absolutely. And you're discovering it in your personal journey, but this is again one of those lessons that apply to absolutely everyone. And that's also a part of those changes. I mentioned a lot about the world changing, because that's
Mhm.
something really, really significant also in my work, in my life, and in the world. And a part of that changes, and I see it as the rise of the divine feminine, hence getting in touch with emotions, being able to communicate more clearly, and also the idea of flow. So if you talk about it in terms of masculine, feminine, the masculine tendency is of control and structure. And the feminine tendency, and it's not exactly men and women, we can talk about the difference if you want, but the feminine characteristic is to flow, like water. So every water needs the container. So the container is the masculine, the structure, and the flow, the creation, is the feminine. So we're learning more and more and more in today's time, more than ever, to find a deeper level of trust, so we can kind of just jump forward and take that leap of faith without feeling the need to make sure everything is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I wanted to, I love where the conversation's at, and I don't want to make this like a, just a session for me and the stuff that I'm dealing with. But I wanted to talk about like, you mentioned becoming a channeler.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about that journey and the multi-dimension part of that?
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned that for the past 13 years, I've been working on developing my psychic abilities and really, really opening my intuition. And during this time, I tried channeling a couple of times and decided it was too woo for me. I thought it's like how can I verify that it's real? I just felt like it wasn't really for me professionally, and I put it aside. And then, approximately 5 years ago, I started a training with a teacher, with a channeling teacher. And it was a long form training, many months, with a lot of practices, body work and breath work and meditations and channeling practices. It was like literally hours a day, but it was also during the COVID shutdown. So I had ample time
Mhm.
to do this training. And within the training, I felt much more comfortable channeling, because it wasn't a matter of a professional responsibility. Is it verifiable or not? It was more space of play, of practice, of exploration and experimentation. And that allowed my left brain and my professional responsibility to kind of relax a little when I was in that space of play. And as I said, it was really intense and long training. So we're talking months and months and months. And within the training, one of the things that I realized right away, that channeling came really, really naturally to me. And as I said, even prior to that, I have channeled. I just couldn't tell if it was real or not. The people I was with, the people I channeled for, were ecstatic. But me as a psychologist, I was like, I don't know, this is so weird. So that's why I put it aside until I did that training. And in that training, it really became my world. So first of all, as I said, I felt comfortable playing and experimenting. And in that space of play and experimentation, um, I really devoted myself to this world of channeling, um, which of course we'll get into, about all the messages and the wisdom that come through. And it even changes your energy. I mean, it does so much. And it became my world. And when the training ended, I just continued. And over time, other people from the training fell off the practice and stopped channeling, all the other students that I was studying with. But I continued. It just became the focal point of my life and my work. And it's just such a fascinating world. And I discovered that my mind just kept on expanding and expanding and expanding. So at first, it was the leap of faith that channeling is an okay practice and it's okay for me to play with. And also, of course, over time, I was getting enough validation that I felt there was a reality to it. Or even more important, there is a benefit to it. So people hear what the guides say when I channel, and they really take it in because they feel it's coming from a higher source. They believe, or at least want to believe. And that makes a big difference because the information that comes through does tend to be very expansive, very big, very deep. So it's a really, really interesting world. So during this journey of channeling, I wrote 2 books, Conversations with the Earth and Conversations with Hathor. So Conversations with the Earth really documents the, let me say it, take a step back. As a new channeler, especially as a part of the training, but even after that, I was really encouraged to play with different sources, experiment, channel different things. And again, the idea is to experiment and expand and explore. And indeed, me and my group mates, those are the ones asking questions while I'm channeling, took this opportunity to ask a lot of questions to as many sources as we can. So in the book, Conversations with the Earth, the first chapter, for example, I channel fire consciousness. You know, my mind at the time, how can fire consciousness speak? I mean, it didn't even make sense to me. And then I channeled wind and water, and then the moon. Oh, before the moon, trees. So it kept on getting from me, as my left brain grounded person, crazier and crazier and wilder. But it happened gradually in a way that I was okay with that. It was fun. It was interesting. And I also trusted myself, and still do, to keep grounded, keep practical, keep discerning. So I'm not just floating somewhere in some other world, losing that practical aspect of it, which is so important to me as a person, but also, again, my training as a clinical psychologist, it needs to be real, it needs to be practical, it needs to be useful, because if not, what are we doing here? So my book, Conversations with the Earth, it says with the Earth, and it starts with Earth elements, but then it gets really wild and really galactic. The wildest chapter, in my opinion, is the one where we wanted to interview the hybrid children. We were curious about the hybridization program. So first, I connected to the Zetas, and I channeled the Zetas who told us about the program. And then I decided to channel a hybrid child. I'm like, okay, how about the hybrid children themselves? Can I channel a hybrid child? And I called the hybrid children, and I was able to channel first a caregiver, and then a hybrid child. It wasn't really a child, but he was a person, was selected, and I channeled him. So really wild ride, but the focal point was humanity and the consciousness shift that is happening now. So really interesting, really wild journey, and really mind expanding, because what's possible, that notion of what's possible kept on growing and growing and growing as I continued on this journey. And now my second book, Conversations with Hathor, that came out this year, specifically focuses on the messages from Hathor. And what's interesting that it actually starts chronologically before Conversations with the Earth, because Hathor was one of the first sources that came through to me. But not only I didn't know who she was when she came through, I never heard the name before the first time she came through. Not only that, like I said, I was in the midst of the practice of trying different things and channeling different things. So I didn't have the knowing that my relationship with Hathor as a channeled source, as an integrated essence into my life, was going to become a long-term relationship. It's steady. We're steady. We're going on steady now. So before, because the book started before, it also captures specifically my channeling journey. So for people that are interested in channeling or developing their own intuition, that have all these questions about trust, about discernment, about how do you know that it's real, if anyone is going through that type of journey, Conversations with Hathor is really recommended, because that's exactly the beginning of the book. That's exactly what it deals with. We were all new channelers. I was channeling. The people were asking the questions were channelers in training. So a lot of the questions was about that. How do we find that deeper trust? How do we know? How do we discern? How do we develop our subtle senses? So the beginning of the book is a lot about that. And then it gets more cosmic and deeper about the nature of Hathor, their history of interacting with humanity. I don't know if you want to touch that. It's kind of wild, but it's really interesting.
No, like I was just thinking, because I grew up like, big fan of like X-Files, and also Stranger Things is getting ready to come with their final season, and a lot of this stuff, like a lot of people are like, oh, this is such a very entertaining show or whatever, but I'm like, well, yeah, these shows that people are putting out are based in some form of reality. And like I started thinking, as soon as you started talking, or I was reading about the multidimensional channeling, I'm thinking of 11, and everything. But so my mind's always been open about a lot of this stuff. In fact, like when I did my hypnotherapy journey, I was always looking for a way. I need to get better at meditation. Like prayer and meditation should be a everyday part of my life, especially being in recovery. But stilling my mind and focusing on one thing has always been a struggle. But it sounds like getting into more stuff like this would help exercise that muscle, I guess, so to speak.
Absolutely. So I still have a group where I channel every week. So I still meet with my Sunday group. So it's been going on for more than 5 years now. We never stopped. I mean, the group has changed and people change, but we're still meeting every week, and I channel. And I actually start with something that's called field tuning. They call it field tuning. People often call it light language. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's basically channeled sound. So it's not language. It can be tones. It can be like language, but not English, not a spoken language that we understand. And what's interesting, that all those sounds and tones really impact your energy, your physiological energy, the full spectrum from physics to higher dimensions. And being in the proximity of that energy, especially if you do it on a regular basis, starts changing you permanently. So if you do it once, it's an experience, right? But if you start doing it more regularly, like anything else, it becomes really a part of you, and it really starts modifying you. In quantum physics terms, you actually start vibrating in a little higher frequency. In humans terms, you can say that you're becoming more well, healthier, stronger. But it's very, very interesting, but it does change you. And it's true about channeling in general, but I found even more so with light language and field tuning, which is, for me, was the wooest part of it all. And that took me the longest to become okay with. So even after I was channeling, right, I was channeling Conversations with the Earth and all these crazy journeys, I was not doing light language yet. And I wasn't really comfortable with light language. it took me a couple of years of practicing light language with a group to start becoming more comfortable with it. And once again, the layers of validations from people, it's so helpful because it happened to me so many times, again, especially with the light language and the field tuning, that people say, oh, I don't know how to feel energy, I never feel energy, I don't know what it feels like. And all they close their eyes and just a few tones and they feel it, in their body. I've seen people shake, I've seen people cry, but usually it's just joy, and people feel tingling and different things, but they feel the energy very, very viscerally, which is such a beautiful validation for me as a channeler, especially when you do something that's even more abstract than English channeling. So that was very helpful for my journey to convince myself of the validity of that.
Yeah, when I was doing that that hypnotherapy group, I actually joined like a 2-year apprenticeship or internship or whatever, and we would meet on like do like mini retreats. And during those retreats, we would practice like breath work, and we would do like drum circles or do like the bowl,
The singing
you know,
bowl.
yeah, and I would feel that energy when it would come around, through the circle,
Yes.
and I got into like solfeggio frequencies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would listen to that stuff when I go to sleep at night.
Excellent.
Unfortunately, my girlfriend's not a big fan of it. I don't know. She just she'd rather listen to like which I mean I think is still maybe beneficial, like chanting monks and stuff like that.
Oh, yes, that's beautiful. Whatever puts you in the right atmosphere, that's what it is about. When we talk about frequency or energy, you can also make it less enigmatic. And it's your mood and it's your attitude. So, you know the difference if you're relaxed and you're kind of floaty, you feel the difference. You don't have to understand energies or spirituality or anything like that. It's just the way that you feel.
Yeah. And I've been, as we were talking, I'm a big music fan. I've had a lot of musicians on. I've
Mm-hmm.
used to listen. I mean, I still occasionally listen to a lot of like heavy, hard music, but I noticed like the I'm more aware now of the power and the effect that music can have on us. And if we're not listening to the
Mm-hmm.
right frequency of music, how that could
Mm-hmm.
actually harm us if we're too, around
Absolutely.
some of that, so it's like I try and balance out my, like, when I'm at the gym listening to, heavy metal or something, I come home and at night, like, heal with something like solfeggio frequencies or, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yes. Yes. I
but
also do retreats and I also do travel. And I like everything that you mentioned. I'm very much into drum circles. I'm into the crystal balls. I do a lot of hypnosis groups. I think all of this is so healing and so integrative, right? You want to do different modalities. That's what integration is about. And
yeah,
and it's also important to move. Let's mention that too. A part of integration and processing energy, movement is really good. So whether you go for a run or whether you go dancing, I think dancing is the ultimate way to move energy with movement because it's such a joyous way to move. But yeah, I think that's an important part of the integration that's unfortunately not often mentioned.
yeah, we've been talking, me and my girlfriend have been talking about taking some dance classes, but actually right next to me I have like a vibration plate that I'll part of my morning routine. When I get up in the morning, I'll just get on that for like 10 minutes and kind of get myself, my lymphatic system, whatever,
Vibrating.
vibrating and go and ready for the day. um but yeah, a lot of this, I've been really, I've noticed, like, is the when for a lot of my healing since I've gotten out of the military was just like, they just want to throw a pill at it. They're here, take this,
Yes.
it'll make everything better without
As
getting
if
to
there are
the
no
root
side
cause.
effects and consequences to taking
Yeah,
medications.
yeah, exactly. And I've been more on this journey, like you said, the woo, and
Yes,
the woo has benefited me quite a bit. And I'm hoping more and
absolutely.
more people get awoken to the woo.
Yes.
Um, I wanted to ask too about I mean, we talked about your books and the conversation with Hathor, you said,
Yes.
and conversations with the earth. But there is something I read in your bio about, I don't the earth spirits and the fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes, absolutely. So you really want to get woo. Okay.
Yeah, I'm all the way woo. Let's woo it up.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the fairy. So what part of my spiritual journey? I've been going to the Monroe Institute. Remember, my spiritual journey is very science based. So I've been going to the Monroe Institute for about 13 years now, regularly doing different programs, which has been fundamental in developing my intuition, in discerning different states of consciousness, different altered states of consciousness, etc., etc. So a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I went to the Star Lines program at the Monroe Institute. And during the program, this being appeared to me. And she had green skin, but very different than what we see on TV. So it was very surprising for me because the skin had like different shades. Like it was very realistic. It was very weird. It was very weird. So this being appeared to me with green skin. And I kind of brushed it off. Maybe it was too weird for me. Maybe I didn't know what to do with that. So I kind of continued on my meditation. And but then the following day, the same being came back. And that's when I started paying attention. And then when I came back from the journey, I had the knowing that the being was a fairy, that there was also a galactic aspect to it, and that her name was Viola. I just came without knowing. So I went back home from the Monroe Institute, went back to my Sunday group where I channel every week, and I tell them about the experience, and we're very interested. But still, it took me, I think, a couple of months to gather up the courage to call Viola the fairy for me to actually channel her. So I'll take another step back and I'll mention that during those experiences at the Monroe Institute, I also had the knowing that that fairy, that person, was an aspect of myself. So you can consider it a past life. You can consider it an aspect of my soul. There are different ways to kind of conceive of it, but the idea that it's a part of me, it's an aspect of myself. And often when you channel aspects of yourself. So that's where I got the idea to channel her, but it took me a few months to gather up the courage. And even then, the idea, what if it doesn't work? I mean, can I channel a fairy? It's a mind trip. So about a couple of months of gathering the courage, I went into my channeled state and I called on Viola, and she came on full force. Let me tell you, that fairy is bubbly and she has so much energy. She speaks fast and I get super hot. Now it's the same, but at the beginning, I got super, super hot when I channeled her. There was such intense energy, but such fun energy too. And one of the cool things that Viola said is that as a part of the changes that are happening right now with the world and with humanity, then more and more people are going to be able to see fairies and other nature spirits. And it's not going to be necessarily automatic. It's going to be based on your interest, based on your intention, based on what you're interested in and want to bring into your life. But that's going to be a more open, available option.
Nice. And I there's been a lot of talk, like I mentioned earlier, big fan of the X-Files. And there's been a lot of talk about disclosure coming up and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
kind of preparing. It feels like preparing the masses for like a revealing coming our way.
Oh, there
And
is a revealing coming. It's coming and it's coming soon. The guides tell me about 2 years, and there are going to be steps along the way. I'm already experiencing contact, but not face to face with beings, which is what I really want to. And they're saying that's the next stage for me and for other individuals that are doing this kind of work, and for groups that are doing this kind of work, and then for the rest of society. And they're putting that timeline in about 2 years. So that's really exciting, because that's really soon. We're no
yeah,
longer, talking sometime in the future, if it's accurate. Who knows? We'll wait and see. But if it's accurate, we're really talking not only in our lifetime, but soon. So that's super exciting.
yeah, very much so. And that, like I meant, I was reading in your uh, bio about the extraterrestrial connection, the ETs. What, have you been? Is that what you were just talking about? You haven't been able to see any of that face to face yet, but um,
Yeah, so I have communication with orbs that appear in the sky or far away. Um, I Those are more extraterrestrials. I believe that's actually connected to Hathor, the Hathors. I had this past June, so a few months ago, I saw physically for the first time a fairy. So that's pretty cool. I was told at the beginning of the year when I channeled Hathor, they said, we asked about physical contact and open contact in my group. And they said that I was going to have a contact event in June. They said that like 5 or 6 months in advance. And I was thinking an alien. What else is contact? But to my surprise, I got a fairy.
nice. And then, but like you just confirmed too, it's like, that they're, I think there's like people like, and I get kind of like tinfoil hat. My girlfriend will call me, but part of being like open minded and looking into certain things, especially with my time in the military, there's a lot of things that I would see that just didn't make sense. But I feel like there's a lot of kind of like what within the government, there's a lot of people that I think are involved with this channeling and,
Oh,
are
yes.
obviously aware of, there's a lot more that they're aware of that we're not. And I think they'll drop like little, like to kind of prepare, because I think if it's a lot of people that just live the day to day and like the distractions of life and stuff, I think it'd be very traumatic, if everything just kind of like got revealed at once. So it feel like
Yes,
they're like kind of trickling little drops here and there to
absolutely.
try and prepare
Absolutely.
people, and people like yourself are already, are training, I think, to be the maybe like
The
the clinical
welcoming
psychologist.
committee.
Yeah, yeah. But also the clinical psychologist to help make it easier for some of
Yeah,
the
that
people
makes
that
sense.
struggle with this.
Yes, absolutely. I always saw myself as a bridge
Yeah.
between different worlds, different communities, and now different realms. I always saw myself functioning as a bridge.
And with that, the multi-dimensional channel stuff that you've trained and learned, like how can you explain like the multi-dimensional facet of that a little bit more for the audience?
Yes, so I'm sure people have heard, for example, of mediums that spoke to people who've crossed over. And you've heard of psychics, and I'm also a psychic, and I also do mediumship, but I don't call myself a medium. Where you tap into the energy and you get information. But the multidimensional channeling is the fact that I have the ability, I have like a wide spectrum. Um, that's a part of my makeup. So I have an ability to channel a really wide spectrum of different consciousnesses and different beings. So anywhere from, so we talked about Hathor. So the first two that came to me to channel was Hathor and Jesus. So you see how like wide and high it is. And I had, as I mentioned, different councils, ET councils, archangels. So it just, when we talk about multidimensionality, we talk about the dimensions where the sources I'm channeling are from. And there are many different dimensions, and you can even see it as different beings often come from different dimensions. And that's one way to look at it. It's not exactly accurate, but it's one way to look at it. So I have the ability to tap into different dimensions, different angles, and channel different entities. Similarly to what I described in the book, Conversations with the Earth, as I said, every chapter I channel something completely different. And there are councils, there are trees. I mean, think about it that way. You can logically get a sense that the spirit of trees, whatever that is, right? Or consciousness of fire, and on the other hand, on the same hand time, consciousness of archangels, that is going to be different. It just makes sense. It sounds like they're going to be different. It feels like they're going to be different. So they come from different dimensions. They operate in different dimensions. And I just have the ability to tap into different sources depending on the need.
Nice. Now I've, I was raised Catholic, did the altar boy thing, all that, growing up. And, when I came back from my time overseas, I would probably follow more like of a Christian, I'll look at, like, you mentioned Jesus, and that's like in my recovery program. And the biggest struggle I've had is kind of like like the stuff that was as a child that was kind of like programmed almost. It was like another form of programming. And like even going to the military was like boot camp and everything was another form of programming. And now
Absolutely.
like trying to reprogram my spiritual journey, I still look at Jesus Christ as like my higher power for my recovery.
Yes.
But for people like myself that are trying to like lose more of the walls that have kind of been holding us, I guess, the subconscious walls, what would you suggest to connecting with our higher self, or this, humanity is getting ready for a conscious shift. But for those of us that are more aware and want to, I guess, elevate to the next level, what would you, for somebody like myself, what would you suggest?
Yeah, it's simpler than you would think in terms of what I would suggest. So one, meditation. Daily meditation is really a basic practice, and you want to meditate daily or really, really close to it. Let's say 5 days a week to be considered daily. And this practice will allow you to start getting to know yourself, start befriending your own mind, getting to know your own body and your own energy, exercising that muscle of quiet between thoughts. So, right, to be a meditator, to meditate, it's not like you need to know how to, that's it, my mind is off, now I'm going to be completely silent for 40 minutes. It's not really how it happens.
No.
It's the nature of meditation is usually much more wavy. And when you're a beginner, the waves are closer together. So you can have a thought, realizing you're having a thought, be quiet for a second. Oh, I have a thought, realizing you're having a thought, be quiet for a second. And that's okay. You're exercising that muscle of the quiet between the thoughts. So you're both getting to know your thoughts and emotions better, but also exercising that inner listening muscle. So that's crucial. Daily meditation. And other than that, I would say really focus on wellness towards the self. Make sure that you are gentle and patient and compassionate with yourself, especially during these times of change. A lot of things are coming up to the surface. That's why early in our conversation, I asked you if you notice that things are more raw and more vulnerable, because everything is being pushed up to the surface. This is intentional. But it also means that extra self-care is needed here. So these are the two things that I would recommend to anyone on a journey of self-growth: meditation, and really focus on that self-wellness in terms of giving yourself the space to feel, to be, not being so harsh on yourself. If your body needs more rest, allow yourself to rest more. Just really exercise that self-compassion and patience muscle, because that's crucial.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's something that I struggle with. I mean, you mentioned the 40 minutes of meditation, and I'm lucky to sometimes just calm my mind for 5 if I'm
Mhm.
lucky to get there. I
And
feel
that
like,
is fine. That is very valuable. Don't feel like you're not doing good work if it's 5 minutes of quiet. It's beautiful.
and that's the other thing too, like you mentioned, the being more compassionate towards self and the self care. It's like I struggle with that subconscious, like,
Hmm.
unworthiness, that low self-worth thing that
Hmm.
I've been, that's what I'm hoping to work on with the CBT uh,
Hmm.
therapist right now, because like I'll self-sabotage close personal relationships because
Hmm.
when things start getting too like loving and tight, I'll feel
Yes.
like, well, I'm unworthy. I gotta screw this up before you decide you're gonna leave me anyway, or
Hmm.
whatever.
CBT is wonderful, but if it doesn't work, come see me.
Yeah, it sounds like I probably would need to do that anyway with where I'm hoping to get to the root of, like, almost rewriting the record, the record that
Hmm.
always plays subconsciously in our head, you
Hmm.
know, playing
Yeah,
it backwards now or whatever, or just rewriting the grooves
exactly,
there.
exactly.
And then like, working with you said you mentioned you work with uh, have worked with a lot of veterans
Hmm.
and kind of like dealing with the triggers and the traumas. Um, what has been where have you found some of the most success in that regard?
Hypnosis, definitely hypnosis. With vets, nothing works better than hypnosis. Yes, some CBT. I mean, you do have to. When I say hypnosis, you don't come to my session and I go like this and you're knocked out for an hour. It's really more of an active process, and we also talk. So it's also in addition to hypnosis, there's counseling involved. But yes, but that's the most helpful with vets for sure. First and foremost, what I work with vets is to calm their nervous system, because
Mm,
they're so on edge, they're triggered so easily, and they can get volatile so quickly. And then it goes into this self hate talk. So, the first thing that I do with them is usually work on calming that nerve system, so they're not as easily triggered, so they can even remember what it feels to have a calm body. What's fascinating with vets, and usually I love doing hypnosis. And they're usually, oh, I don't know if I can be hypnotized. It's very, very common. And then, of course, we do. Within 10 minutes, they're out. It's totally common, totally normal. And the first thing that they notice, that they didn't even remember what it felt for their body to be relaxed, because they're so on
mm,
edge and they're so tight all the time that they don't realize that they're tight, because that's their normal state. And then when we do hypnosis, the beginning of hypnosis is relaxation, physical relaxation, mental relaxation. And they relax so deeply and their bodies just relax. And it's so healing. So that is crucial. And that is usually what I start with vets. We work on neutralizing that extra energy in the nervous system.
nice. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've done some of that in the past, and it definitely helped find like a core point in my life, um, that I had buried, that I needed to, you know, focus on and start healing. But I still, like, everything you were describing, I still struggle sometimes with, like, uh, just not relaxing, just not
Mm-hmm.
being like, or listening to my body, where it's just like, okay, I have nothing. I'll wake up in the morning with nothing on the calendar, but I'll be like feeling anxious, like I gotta accomplish something. I gotta go out and
Mm-hmm.
do things. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, and that will, like, if I have plans with, my girlfriend and her kids, or something with my kids, it's just like I'll ruin the moment or whatever, the journey to wherever we're going, because I'll let the anxiety of like we have to
Mm-hmm.
be somewhere right away or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's still work I need to definitely do with myself, just relax and let it
Go
the
with the
flow.
flow.
Go with the flow. Yeah, exactly. Get back into the flow, like you mentioned at the beginning, and the flow between my
Exactly.
masculine and feminine side.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then, before we get ready and wrap up, because I know we've already gone over a little bit of the time that you promised me, um, and I want to be conscious of that. The light language activation, um, that you had mentioned. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you would recommend for people that want to work on that for themselves as well?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, go to my YouTube, check out clips because I have a lot of free stuff on there. So that's a great resource for you to experiment, explore, see what resonates with you. But absolutely, I also teach, and I love teaching that. One of the things that I love the most. I teach light language and channeling, and you don't have to want to become a professional channeler to benefit from the training, because the idea is, and that is what I teach, that's what the training and teaching is I teach you how to become a clearer vessel and how to enter the flow and hold that space as clearly as you can, and then express it with your voice. So the main thing, that it's like channeling 101, right? The main thing is really to learn to enter that state and to hold it, the state of flow. And the second part is to really become more comfortable with your voice and use it as a source of expression. And the reason that I like teaching the light language, because then people don't have to think about what they're saying or who they're channeling. It is just about being in the flow and just about expression. So it's really, really beautiful and it's very healing and very empowering. So I really, really enjoy teaching that.
Awesome. Yeah, so you mentioned your YouTube channel. So like where if people do want to discover or follow like your YouTube channel, but also like some of the other trainings that you offer, where would you send everyone?
The easiest thing is to go to my website, yafichanneling.com. That's YAFI, that's my first name, channeling.com. And that's my website. There you have links to my books, to YouTube, to the different events and groups that I hold, and everything that you want.
Okay, great, great. And then I want to ask you a couple questions I normally ask my guests before we get ready and wrap up. Um, we've had, very. I'm curious to hear your answer for this. I ask this question all the time for, what class do you feel should be mandatory before kids graduate high school today?
Oh, wow. Before high school. Okay. I may give you an unconventional answer, but I think nutrition. I don't know, even doctors don't study enough nutrition. Um, yeah, nutrition, meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so two classes, nutrition and meditation, should be a part of every college degree.
Yes, I agree for sure. And like you mentioned, yeah, definitely doctors don't. They get a small portion of that, and the rest is
One
here.
class,
Take
one
some
class in
pills.
nutrition of all the years of medicine study.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
That's
information there is not even accurate. It's based on an antiquated idea of the food pyramid, which is not even accurate.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, and then who are three people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
Wow. So, mm, that's too hard. I'll cheat and go professionally. And professionally, I would say that people that influenced me the most with hypnosis, it would be Brian Weiss and Dolores Cannon. And with my channeling, I'll credit my channeling teacher, Lisa Royal Holt, an amazing channeler. She's been doing this for 45 years, and she's wonderful.
Awesome. And then going back to childhood, favorite toy as a child?
Favorite toy? Climbing trees. No toys.
Climbing trees. You're already connecting with those tree spirits, even as
Absolutely.
a kid, right? Awesome. And then, we've talked about working with veterans, and I like to always give a message out. Any message you have for our military members that are currently serving overseas?
Yes, of course. Let's start with thank you for your service, and thank yourself for what you're doing. Other than that, it's so different from person to person. I would say listen to our conversation here and what we've said about that self-care, about that self-compassion and self-patience, about realizing that even when you don't realize it at the moment, you're going through so much more than you can process. So really, really be as understanding with yourself and give yourself that space to just be.
Awesome. Doctor, I appreciate your time so much. This was a great conversation, and I hope we definitely stay connected. I will definitely be following up with you because I want to embrace my inner feminine side,
Yes, your girlfriend will appreciate that.
Yeah, I know she will, for sure. And then and just with everything, like you said, I feel the shift. I want to be ready, and I'd like to hopefully be a I guess the bridge for my loved ones, in my area, for what is coming. So thank you so much for your time. It was really great talking with you, and look forward to the journey ahead.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Listen up! Hold on to your seats. Grab your girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Balaam Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kaelin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Hey!